we doing?
You're doing all right.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, Minister Deirdre Clark, I just want to say thank you so much. But let me just say, her introduction was quite impressive. We have an impressive man in front of us, don't we? But the reason why he's most impressive to us is because we are Jesus people. We are Jesus people. And Jesus people, we love when our leadership serves the Lord. And Ambassador Young, the most important thing that we want to honor today and lift you up is we celebrate you being the first African American ambassador of the United Nations. We celebrate your list of accomplishments, but what we celebrate most is when you said in your book, you said, and if I could do the best I could one day at a time and not worry about the future, let the day's own trouble be sufficient unto
the day thereof.
That was when he decided to not follow in his father's footsteps as a dentist, but to serve the Lord and his people. Amen.
Well, actually, I think my father served the Lord as a dentist. And one of the reasons why I feel such a heavy burden is that I was so blessed. I mean, my daddy got a chance to go to Howard University Dental School and graduated in 1921. See, and that was almost the Dark Ages. But to be born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and my parents, mother and father, mother went to Straight College, which is now Dillard University, and is a teacher. And my grandmother was a saint who was blind. And my job from the time I was about 8 years old till she died when I was about 14, my job was to come home every day and read the Bible and read the newspaper. And I had to listen to her preaching. And that's why I said there are very few people who are as blessed as me. And with father and mother both educated and, before I was born, long before. And living in a neighborhood where there was an Irish grocery store on one corner, an Italian bar on another. The Nazi party was on the third corner. And they were Highland Hitler when I was born. So I'm not upset now. When I was 4 years old, and my father took me to see Jesse Owens in the Movietone News in the 1936 Olympics. And he said, look, white supremacy is a sickness. And you don't get upset with sick people. You do not lose your temper around sick people because you can catch the sickness. And he said, watch Jesse Owens. When he won his first race, Hitler and all his stormtroopers, rather than give him his medal, they thought they were insulting him by leaving the stadium. But my daddy said, look, but Jesse was cool. He just ignored that, focused on his race, and broke 3 more world records. So he said, the moral of that story is don't get mad, get smart.
And that's the reason why we're going to learn about the Atlanta Way, because the Atlanta Way talks about 3 B's that you learned from the unofficial mayor, right? And the 3 B's are the ballot, the book, and the buck. Can you help us understand?
Yeah. Atlanta was, first of all, blessed. We maybe should put the book first, because Morehouse College is celebrating its 150th anniversary right now. And Clark Atlanta University is along the same. And So we've had Spelman College, was founded shortly afterwards. The Interdenominational Theological Seminary. And so we had, in the 40s, probably the greatest collection of black intellectuals anywhere in the world. You had people like W.E.B. Du Bois, and Lester Granger, who founded the Urban League, Dr. Benjamin Mays, and many others. And in one of the elections, the mayor then in the 40s, Mayor Hartsfield, bought that land for the airport for $90,000. He put up red lights on Peachtree Street, and he invited Delta Airlines, which was a little crop dusting airline in Louisiana, not far from where you and I come from, and gave them the use of all the land they wanted for $1 a year for 50 years. And people voted him out of office. And so there were not that many black voters, but all of them were in that Atlanta University complex. And so it was the white business community that decided that there weren't enough progressive white people to take Atlanta forward as fast as they needed to go. So they went to the AU Center, and they formed a kind of unofficial alliance between the business community and the black community. It was the business community coming to us, wanting us to help them be progressive. And a lot of that was Coca-Cola that was already operating all over the world. And they realized the kind of world we're living in, we had to be together.
I think the word that I read through the book it resonates with me over and over again: inclusion.
Yeah.
You are the unifier. Inclusion. And that let me just switch gears for a second and let's talk about the current administration. Let's just talk about where we are right now. Everyone is talking about 100 days, 100 days. Or we're not waiting 100 days. It is the 24th day today. Okay, 24 days that we have
Well,
seen.
I'm not sure.
It's almost, yeah, it's 20 almost.
No, I mean, I'm not sure we're not waiting.
Okay, talk to me. I'm putting the mic down.
I mean, right now, the scripture that resonates with me is, wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he will strengthen your heart. Those that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get weary. They will walk and not faint. See? So I am not anxious for the morrow. Let the day's own trouble be sufficient unto the day thereof. And I don't know what the future will hold, and I don't know what Donald Trump and others are thinking or planning or plotting, but I know who holds the future. Amen. See, and so I'm not worried. But let me go back. I got those lessons with the Nazi Party at 4 years old. So people talking Hitler-like talk, that doesn't upset me. I had to deal with that before I went to kindergarten. So and I had to walk past that place, to get to the grocery store even sometimes. You learn, and I think that's one of the differences between those of us who grew up in the South and those who grew up in the North. We knew you could not count on justice. You knew that there was no government agency that would protect you. You trusted in the Lord, and my daddy used to box with me, and he'd teach me to box, and his thing was, if you know how to fight, you don't have to fight. Okay. But don't get mad, get smart. And so if I'd ever start swinging wildly, he'd slap me upside the head and say, don't lose your cool. If you get upset in a fight, you're going to lose the fight. Your mind is the most powerful weapon you have. But in order to use it, you have to stay calm.
But
So-
you wasn't always thinking calmly. Can I just
No, I
I love this quote. I love this quote. You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
You know where I'm going. And this is really important because the quote resonates with everyday life, and we have to face challenges and we have to make decisions. And you and I talked about, like, for example, the decision that the acting attorney general made, acting attorney general Yates. She decided to not follow or do whatever she decided to do. I bring this up because I'm just going to read this quote. I need to negotiate from a position of strength. If they come here, I'm going to gun them down. I'm going to go down and talk with them. I want you to sit in the window with a rifle and point at the person I'm talking to. Then I can negotiate from a position of strength. And she said, no, I cannot do that. I said, why not? She said, I cannot point a gun at another human being. I said, that is the Ku Klux Klan. She said, well, that if you do not realize that under that sheet is the heart of a child of God, you've got no business calling yourself a preacher. I underlined that because that was your wife, Jean, telling you.
Well,
And she being a rifle.
She was a good shot. She was a country girl. And that's what you do in the country on dates. You go sit out in the back of the, in the back of the yard, and they had and you shoot tin cans in the ravine. And she could outshoot me, not with a gun and a basketball. And so I was trusting her because I had gone to seminary up here. And they were reading Reinhold Niebuhr and Paul Tillich and all of that about, the church was really against nonviolence at that time because it was right after the World War II, and they felt that we should have gone in earlier and stopped Hitler, and there was, a lot of debate. So that was my educational background. From where she came in the country, in Marion, Alabama, and interestingly enough, that's how you know the Lord was in this movement. Jean Young, whom I married, Coretta Scott, who Martin Luther King married, and Juanita Abernathy, who Ralph married, were all from the same county.
And went to school together.
Went to school together. And we didn't know each other. But that was one hell of a county. That was a county that we marched in 65, where Jimmy Lee Jackson was killed, and that led to the march from Selma to Montgomery. So they grew up. In fact, the march where Jimmy Lee Jackson was killed came from the community that I pastored my first church in and that she grew up in. And it went to Coretta's church, which was the AME church. And when Jimmy Lee Jackson got shot, we all thought that it was the policeman that shot him. Later, we found out that the policeman did shoot him, but it was a flesh wound, and that it was a black doctor sewed him up and left him well, and was called back after midnight. 2 white doctors took him back into the operating room and gave him too much ether. And when the black doctor went in to tell him, they said, get out of here, boy, you're just an intern. And if you don't get out of here, you will be the next one. And so this was a bad place. And they grew up with sort of the worst of the South and the best of the South, because there were missionaries who came down from the north, from the Church of the Brethren and the Quakers, and they got Coretta out of there to Antioch College in Ohio. Jean and her sisters went to Manchester College in Indiana, and where the only 2 schools that I know about where they were teaching nonviolence. And so when I met her, she had the Bible underlined at those passages where Jesus was talking about turning the other cheek. And I mean, it's not just turning the other cheek literally, but she was a serious opponent of racism and segregation, and but would not kill and would not compromise her faith. Now, she forced me to think, and when she wasn't going to back me up with the gun, I had to use my head, and I called some of the elders in town, and we decided to go see the mayor who was in the Watts hardware store. And we talked to him about the Klan coming because we were having a voter registration drive. And we said, look, we're not complaining with the Klan. They can do whatever they want to do, but don't mess with us and our rights. And the mayor of this little country town, Thomasville, Georgia, got on the phone with Sunnyland Packing Company and Flowers Bakery, the two largest employers in that part of Georgia. And they decided to tell the sheriff to let the Klan march only to the courthouse. Don't come in the black community. And that taught me the lesson that if you really want to move the society, you got to move the money.
You got to move the money.
So you have to move the money because while politics is important, it takes 60% to get political change. But the messages of Thomasville, Georgia, Birmingham, and everything else is that if you can cut into the profit margin by 10 or 15%, their businesses can't run. So there's more power in dealing with the economy. And we read, and it's true, that there were some tremendous sacrifices in Birmingham. But maybe not nearly as much as in St. Augustine, which we don't know about at all. But in both of those cases, it was the quiet negotiations. I was telling the Episcopal pastor here today that after the march, after everybody got hosed down and put on the dogs, I had on a suit and tie. And so I had to stand behind a tree because I wasn't supposed to get wet. If you run from a dog, you don't run from a dog. You look a dog in the eye and don't move. You can't let the dog know you're scared. Same thing applies to some doggish folks. But my job was to go to the Episcopal Diocesan House, where I got the bishop to gather some of the reasonable white people and business leaders to come together to meet with Martin Luther King and Ralph Abernathy. Now, they changed. They took down the signs. They integrated the lunch counters. They said they couldn't find black folks qualified. We said, wait a minute. The maids you have know more about your business than your managers do. Because the managers have been coming in every 3 to 5 years. These women have been running this store for 15, 20 years. And all you need to do is let them wear the dresses that they sell and get a commission. And let them have the same rights as the white kids that come in and work 6 months and then go on off. Once we made all of those changes quietly, and it was so simple, they wondered why we hadn't done it before. But we said, look, you got a sign here saying white water, white and colored on 2 different water fountains. No difference between white. What's the difference in the water out of white? They said, well, we don't know. It's just always been done that way. Well, we said, that offends us. If you don't take those signs down, we're not coming back. And say, the marches were important, but for 90 days, 300,000 black folk did not buy anything but food or medicine. And that's what made the changes. The changes in Birmingham happened a year and a half before the changes in Congress. And they were done by the business community before the politicians could get around to. And we had a lot more marching and killing and everything else happen to us before the Congress acted.
And this is why we are so honored that you are here. This is 85 years of wisdom, almost 85 years. Next month. He will be 85 years old. Please, absolutely. 85 years of organizing for impact.
Well, I got my lessons from Mayor David Dinkins at Howard University. And see, Mayor Dinkins he'd been to the Marine Corps. And so he was disciplined and organized and clean, always clean. See, and I was a little country boy from Louisiana. And he kind of shaped me up, taught me how to tie a bow tie, put me into fraternity and a lot of other things. And I'm not telling out of school, but I got beat up 2 or 3 times in the civil rights movement. But none of them went any worse than the beatings I got in the fraternity at Howard. and getting roughed up in the fraternity helped me realize that even there, when you get in the middle of a fight, you don't lose your cool. You stay calm. And I think part of the roughness of the fraternity to initiations and things like this is to give you a certain discipline of your own spirit. So I don't believe in paddling or brutality, and there are always some folk that are like that. But I think that there's a certain manhood right that helps you transition from being a boy to a man, where you can stand up under pressure. And I think all of that was very much a part of my education.
And I think when you talk about education, I just want to turn to the book right now, and the word that resonates with me is ultimately Atlanta's way of doing things comes back to the city's culture of tolerance, and that tolerance is what you taught the city. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I think that the city really understood that it was in the middle. See, when I came to Atlanta, this was after New Orleans, after Little Rock, where they had to bring in the troops. So the business community knew that business does not go into places where there's trouble. Colin Powell says that capital is cowardly. It only goes where it's safe. So the business community wanted money to come into Atlanta. And so with the population, a majority black in the city limits, they couldn't afford to have confusion. They had to have a peaceful environment to bring the money in. And that's one of the reasons why we were able to bring money in from all over the world. Because we not only, well, I can't do it one at a time. We not only integrated the public sector and had black and white elected officials working together, but we integrated the money. And that's what Dr. King said. Atlanta was the ballot, the book, and the book. Dr. King said we were to redeem the soul of America from the triple evils of racism, war, and poverty. Now, I think when you see Ferguson, I don't think of that as a race problem. That's a jobs problem. That's economics. See, and St. Louis couldn't get together like Atlanta did. So St. Louis is going down. I mean, we can't imagine somebody buying Coca-Cola out of Atlanta, but they let somebody buy Budweiser. I mean, everybody's singing every college, this Bud's for you, and that sort of thing, and it's not owned by St. Louis anymore. It's owned by an overseas company. See? And so as their economy goes down, they move the poor folk out of the city and out of the housing projects into Ferguson with no jobs. See, and no support system. And you got a lot of angry people with no jobs, and then a lot of angry people with a low-paying job and no training, and you got trouble.
And when you talk about trouble, I just want to end on this note because I'm going to end now because I know there are questions in the audience. Am I correct? Do you have questions for the ambassador? Okay, so I just want to move forward, and I want to end on this note. You're right. As a city has moved from railroads to airplanes, to digital airwaves in its business infrastructure, an equivalent evolution must take place in its moral progress. Atlanta has moved beyond tolerance to inclusion. The challenge today is to reach toward a culture that truly celebrates diversity in all of its forms, embracing the vision of Dr. King's beloved community. And that's how you end the blueprint.
Well, that's sort of how he ended his life, standing there with the sanitation workers, saying that this economy has got to include all of God's children. And, you know, we haven't done it. Not long ago, we went back to Memphis to do a film on Dr. King's death and the garbage workers. And, you know, we found one of those garbage workers who was working with us in 1968, still driving a truck. And I think he was 84 then. We were the same age. And we asked him, why are you still working? He said, well, we don't have any retirement benefits, see? And he said also, he was driving the truck. He said also, I like to be with my brothers. And we have stuck together through all of this. And so I don't think it'd be appropriate. He said, a lot of retirement when my time comes. Now that's fortunate and unfortunate. It's fortunate that he has that attitude. It's unfortunate that he doesn't have any other choices. And
we talk about choices, and we talk about organizing for impact, and you have just shared so much wisdom. Go ahead.
One other thing, you know, I say I was blessed. At 4 years old, they taught me about racism. See, but at 9 years old, I went to a federal courtroom where Thurgood Marshall, as a tall, skinny young man, was arguing equal salary for teachers, black and white. And that was in 1941. Now, the issues that we marched about in the 1960s, the courts had been working on since the 40s. See? So there was 20 years. That's why I said, this is not a sprint. Okay. This is a marathon. It's a lifelong marathon. And as soon as you get comfortable with race, then you got people challenging you on gender. And as soon as you get gender, it's going to be language, or it's going to be something. There are always going to be differences that people have to change their attitude toward. Who was it? Somebody used to talk about an attitude adjustment. That's a country song. But we have to adjust our attitudes to the challenges that are coming to us every day. And those challenges are not coming from politicians. Those challenges are not coming from scholars. They're coming from technology. I mean, you said they should tweet and Facebook. That's the difference. Okay. In 1963, Fred Shuttlesworth's house was bombed 3 times, and his church. And it didn't even get the papers in in Atlanta or New Orleans, just the closest big cities. Nowadays, anything that happens and everything that happens, before the news media can get it, we've tweeted it all over the world. And it means that we got to stay calm, and we can't let every little thing get us upset, because it's not an accident that Joe Lowery is still alive, Dave Dinkins still alive. C.T. Vivian's still alive. John Lewis is still alive. And the main reason, a lot of the kids who were angry, they died of heart trouble. They died of ulcers. Hatred, anxiety, anger can eat you up. And that's why the best advice I got from my father is, be cool. Don't get mad, get smart.
Be cool. Don't get mad, get smart.
And it's a lifetime struggle. It's never going to end. See, it's never going to end. Because pretty soon it won't be black. We think of it as black against white. But we are the most blessed people on earth. And that includes rich white people. We may not have as much money as them, but I guarantee you the quality of life, the quality of our relationships, the quality of our spirits gives us a power that enables us to lead the world. And the world is going to be looking to us. I mean, the reason I did so well at the UN was when I showed up there, because I'd been around here campaigning with Dinkins and everything else, when I walked in the door, I was shocked. All of those folk from all over the world, they clapped. They clapped because I was showing up. And they say, you know what it is to be treated like a second-class citizen. We're counting on you to help us get first-class citizenship. That's what Ralph Bunche did. Ralph Bunche is the most underappreciated African American. Everything at the United Nations came from Ralph Bunche. And almost everything that was written, all of the ideas that made the United Nations. So we have a God-sent responsibility to share our blessings with all of God's children all over the world.
On that note, I just want to stay in the moment because time is we're running out of time, but I do not want to leave here until we allow our family, our church family, to ask some questions. Are we ready to do that? I know some of our young people have been polling the audience. I know you shared some questions with some of our young people. So can I just direct you to, can we get some direction here as far as, thank you so much. I want to make sure that if you have a question that you are able to ask the ambassador. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so I'm giving you this mic, okay? I'm following instructions here. Okay. Let me just ask you this. Well, we're going to act like we're in class today. Anybody have a question? Thank you. Thank you. And please say your name and your church affiliation.
Yes, my name is DeQuincy Hentz, and I'm the pastor of Shiloh Church here in New Rochelle. And I was so happy to see a picture with Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays in the book. And can you tell us, we hear a lot about Martin Luther King Jr., but can you tell us the impact of Benjamin Mays on Atlanta?
Well, Benjamin Mays made Martin Luther King. He made Maynard Jackson. Benjamin Mays was a sharecropper who didn't get to college till he was grown. And then he realized that if you're going to be a leader, of poor people, you got to understand what it is to be poor. So one of the things that he did included in the Morehouse curriculum, which they don't do anymore, but Martin Luther King had to go up in Connecticut and work in the tobacco farms and crawl under a 3-foot net in the 90-degree heat, 6-7 hours a day for 6 weeks in the summertime. Now, Dr. Mays could have gotten jobs for him somewhere else, but he particularly picked Martin, who was the son of he was the grandson of a millionaire. His family, his daddy was the treasurer, his granddaddy was the treasurer of the National Baptist Convention when it had 6 million members and it was really united. And so he had a privileged life. It was automatic that he was not only going to get a college degree, but that he was going to get a doctorate in something. So his mama had a master's degree. His daddy went back to Morehouse and got his college degree at 33. And so this was a family that valued education. Maynard Jackson was a spoiled, pompous brat because his grandfather had 5 daughters, 4 of them had PhDs, and one of them was an opera singer. And so Maynard used to have to wear a shirt and tie to dinner and recite poetry instead of Bible verses. So Dr. Mays put him under the net too, and had him crawling in the dirt for 2 summers. See? And what he did was he molded men. Every time I saw him, he had something wise to say to me that kind of stopped me in my tracks and made me think about something I was doing or something I should have been doing. And he walked around Morehouse campus, and I say Morehouse College is a leadership factory because it trains leaders. You're not supposed to be a follower. You're supposed to lead something, and somebody, by example, not by orders. And I think that's why the historically black colleges are still producing most of our leadership. See, and I know it's nice to have an Ivy League degree, but when you come back, an education is about self-esteem and confidence in your own abilities. And when you get through going to these big schools, and I went to University of Southern California one summer, and they kind of broke down on me. Nobody said a word, and that was the problem. They let me walk around there like I didn't count, and nobody cared about me, and nobody spoke to me. And I got out of there and went to Howard. Then I went to Boston University one summer. Same thing. A group of us from Howard went, and we were a support system, but it's very hard when people think so much of themselves that they're looking down on you. And it's hard for you to build up your confidence and your self-esteem to buck a system that they created. And you might not like this, but that's one of the reasons I appreciate Donald Trump. He don't know. I mean, no, look, and here's what he doesn't know. The last 4 secretaries of state that we've had were all Harvard. The last 2 or 3 secretaries of treasury. We had 3 or 4 wars that didn't need to be. I mean, McNamara didn't know anything about Vietnam. He thought they could push around those little bitty people and wouldn't be any trouble. But it didn't happen that way. They thought they knew the world because they read about it in books written by Europeans in the 19th century. That ain't today's world. And I like the new Secretary of State because he's an oil man. Now, why do I like oil men? Because they have to work on a rig. And he was an engineer that had to work either Nigeria, Angola, but he's been to Africa, he's been to Asia, he's been to Russia. And he's not going to make those stupid mistakes. He knows that Iran is not to be messed with. Only because it's 140 million people. That's not like Iraq. They thought Iraq was going to be a pushover because it's 15 million people. Afghanistan's 10 million. People don't respond to what they were taught in books. And they're getting a whole lot of us killed because they think they know the world and they've never been there. So they don't know anybody. That's the other thing about a black college. I got educated by Nigerians at Howard because they studied all the time. And they would tell me, one fellow said, you know, you're a bright lad. You will amount to something if you ever get civilized. And he was right, because he studied. He only slept 4 hours a night and 2 hours in the afternoon, and he studied all the rest of the time. Now, I went to Nigerians with Jimmy Carter, and they were the ones that got Nelson Mandela out of jail, because they stopped selling any oil, and they stopped doing business with Great Britain. And there were about $3 billion worth of contracts that British companies had, and Nigeria caught them sneaking around behind, violating the sanctions on South Africa. And they said, Obasanjo, whose 80th birthday is next month, and he said, no, you have to decide. You cannot do business with 100 million Nigerians if you're going to cater to 15 million white people in South Africa and ignore us. You have to respect our brothers if you're going to do business with us. So it's a real world out there. And we may get a chance to have some fresh approaches to it.
Alan Paul Weaver Jr., pastor of Bethesda Baptist Church of New Rochelle. In listening to you, I've come to understand that there must be some solutions to our problems that we have not yet explored. And it seems as if your statement about Atlanta, you all were able to tap into the business community. You were able to bring money, not from the government, but from Wall Street. What do you suggest for us as we prepare for this critical moment in our history as a people? How can we reduce the poverty rate? How can we encourage our people to get involved in entrepreneurship and businesses? How can we change our lives economically?
Well, I think the new phase of the movement is economic opportunity. And Operation Hope kind of defines poverty. So they want to tell us we got to get our families together, we got to get education. The only thing you need to get out of poverty is a good credit score. If you can get your credit score from below 500 up to 700, you can be out of poverty. And John Bryant, who organized that, is a brother out of Watts who is brilliant. And he organized this group after the Watts riots, now the Rodney King riots. And I try to figure out, where did he get so much confidence? How did he get so smart? How did he realize he was so smart? You know what I decided? He and all the boys, brothers that started that together, were soul-trained dancers. And you got to have a whole lot of guts and chutzpah to come up with a new move, every day to go down that line. Really, we have that's where our power has come from. The preachers that got the moves and the preachers that got the tune, y'all got the people. and why shouldn't we transfer our spirit? Well, rap music is right out of the drum and is right out of and Ray Charles comes right out the church organ. It's John says that when he bought his first car, they made him pay 18.9% interest on the loan. The last car he bought was 1.9% interest. That's the difference between banking like you poor and banking like you middle class. But it's not just poor folk. I've been to all these colleges you're talking about. I've been to all these jobs. And when we finally sat down with 100 black men and we got the banks to give us, that's one thing I had to do. They were not helping black business. So we set out our RFP on black business, and only one bank responded. So I took all the money from the city out of all the banks and put it in that one bank. And then they got the message. All the black businesses started going to that one bank. See? Now, I could do that in Atlanta because we had, out of 18 council members, there were 9 of them black. And there were 2 or 3 really good, wise white folks, who understood and who had lived and worked with us in the movement. And but those are the kinds of things you have to do to get over poverty. Now the other thing is we're building a new airport, and at least 40% of all of every contract is done by a minority or female-owned business. And Maynard Jackson started that in 1980 when we built the new airport. And again, the reason white folk don't complain is we paid maybe $30 billion for that airport over the last 35 years. But it earns about $40 billion a year. And it's responsible for 1 million jobs. And if you go through the airport, you realize that there are a whole lot of black folk working there. But what you don't know is that most of them own the places where they're working.
Hello, my name is Daphne Gamboa, and I am a member of Bethesda Baptist Church of New Rochelle. My question is, what words of encouragement can you give to middle-aged people to get involved with their local communities and local government, being that we are living in the times that we're in?
Well, I think one of the first things we can do is start speaking to people. I think that I caught myself one time. I used to ride my bike for exercise, and I saw a bunch of young hoodlums on the corner, and I started to turn the corner because I didn't want to be bothered with them. And then I said, no, wait a minute. You stood up to white folk. You're going to be scared? You're going to let these brothers scare you? And so I rode my bike right in the middle of them and said, what y'all doing? What's happening here? And I had a bicycle helmet. And then they finally, that's the mayor. See, but somebody stopped and talked to them. We make our policemen visit the schools. We used to have midnight basketball run by the Police Athletic League. And we try to get people involved in the community in official places. Now the mayor, one of our new housing ordinances is that in order to get the city approval, a certain percentage of the new apartments and condos have to be priced in a range where the teachers and police officers can live in the community. And it's not easy because it's taken a long time. But one of the things that happened to us, and nobody did this to us, we got to the place where we sold our souls for a mess of pottage. We thought that if we had heels this high and dresses this tight, and if we had clothes, that fit the latest, if we drove the right car, that was heaven on earth. And in doing that, we left behind our elders and we left behind our children. And so the biggest problem we have as a people is restoring the family. When I look, it was my grandmama, and my daddy. Well, we have rules that take the daddy out of the home if he's unemployed because the mama can't get food stamps. We have to modify those to kind of restore some semblance of family. But my daddy was working all the time too. But the YMCA, the Boy Scouts, my teachers at school, they served as parents. My brothers, big brother, come out of the Marine Corps. So he took me under his wing. And we have to look out for each other, and we have to recreate a family that is neither black nor white, nor red, nor green, nor gay, nor straight, but all of God's children somehow respected and loved and build each other up instead of breaking each other down.
Hello, Ambassador. My name is David Peters. I'm a deacon at Bethesda Baptist Church, and I'm one of the members of a group here, community group in New Rochelle called New Rochelle Against Racism, New Roar. And the question that I have is one that I think you partially answered just now, and as well as the lady that just asked this question. The primary concern that I have, both in terms of your thinking around economic policy relative to being really the engine of change, but my main concern is that, as you mentioned at the end of your statements, that there appears to be a disconnect for us as a people between those of us or those who perhaps may have more access and accessibility to the kinds of things that you're talking about. And so when you mention Ferguson or other cities that exist in the United States that exist in structural inequities and abject poverty, there seems not to be a sense of connection to those people from people who are more engaged and involved, as you mentioned at the end, around thinking about accessibility and moving in and developing economic engines. And many of our people, as you described as family and community, get left behind. And so the question that I have for you is what, in your best thinking, would be a strategy to get people to care about people who are less than them, and not less than them, but have less than them in relationship to the things of comfort that many people probably enjoy?
Well, you're preaching. You know, that's where it comes from. You know, to them to whom much has been given, of them will much be required. It's not suggested, it's required. See, when you get to the pearly gates, one of the things we're working on now is aquaponics, trying to feed people in cities and places where they don't have a lot of ground and water. And part of the reason why I got that way is I'm 85. I don't know how much longer I got. And the Lord said he ain't going to ask me how many times I went to church or what I did on Saturday nights here and there. All he's going to say is, did you feed the hungry? See, did you clothe the naked? Did you set at liberty those who are oppressed? See? And so I realize, and I think maybe that's where you start. We have a country saying, if you see a turtle on top of a fence post, you know he didn't get there by himself. See? And all of us are turtles on top of a fence post. And if you stop and try to remember who helped you when you needed help, who was it? I mean, I write fairly good. The only reason I write good is I was in love with a fourth grade teacher who put her arm around me and said, "Oh, you certainly form your letters well." And that was 75 years ago. I ain't forgot that lady yet. Because nobody ever told me anything good. They were always telling me what's wrong with me. Why you can't keep still? See, you always jumping up in the class. You're nervous. Well, now I tell teachers, and I've been married to 2 teachers, I now tell teachers, well, you know, all of that nervous energy, attention deficit disorder, behavioral this, that, and the other, when I became mayor, they call that multitasking. And if you can't pastor a church if you can't think about 3 things at the same time. See, I mean, why do you have to concentrate and be still? It does not make sense. And so we have to help our children not only by lecturing to them about what they're doing wrong, we have to help restructure the society so that it builds them up and it helps them. Because the other thing that I didn't say about Atlanta, the rappers that cause so much trouble, they are growing up, and they are now a $3 billion industry in Atlanta. They making movies straight out of Compton. That was an Atlanta boy. Tyler Perry moved to Atlanta. And I don't know how many hundreds of people. We probably got 25 or 30 new studios making movies. The thing, Taraji Henson's Hidden Figures, that was made, wasn't that made in Conyers? Right outside of Atlanta. You know, yeah, and so people wanted to throw them away at one time. And we let them grow up. The only thing wrong with the Black Panthers was they didn't get a chance to grow up. The one who did grow up is one of the best congressmen we got, Bobby Rush. See? But can you imagine what this world would be like if Malcolm X were able to be an envoy to the Arab world? Can you imagine the moral authority from America? It would put to bed all of this foolishness that we hear, you know, from those in power. And so let's don't do that to our own that we disagree with and that make us uncomfortable. See, I fight with my grandchildren all the time, see, because I want them to educate me. And in order for me to get a word in with them, I got to take some words from them.
Hi, Ambassador Young, a good friend of yours. I just wanted to ask one question. I think that in the 80s, when I was in Atlanta with you, we were able to mix corporate America with the development of Atlanta, the airport, and all those kinds of things. I think that maybe you ought to share with the kind of dollars that came into Atlanta from blacks that were in corporate America during that period that helped you not only develop downtown Atlanta, but the greater Georgia.
Well, and that was, those were some New Yorkers, some young men from Wall Street who got a chance to get an education and who know how Wall Street worked. And they came down and got with Maynard, and we decided we weren't going to build the airport with government money. And we went to Wall Street for the money we needed. But the way they call the thing that everybody's name is on is a tombstone for some reason. So we had Delta, Eastern, United, American, you know, then Hertz and Avis, and then Marriott, and then the parking lot, and everybody was on the note. And they could not make any money until the debt service was paid. And at the bottom, the city of Atlanta signed. We wouldn't have to pay until everybody else went broke. See? And so that's the reason we've been able to get $30, $40 billion. The mayor's, you know, young Howard lawyer, came up with the rappers, but he sat down with the past president of Delta Airlines, and the two of them put together a $6.5 billion package that they got from Wall Street. That's the next 10-year plan to expand the Atlanta airport even further, so that there'll be the sixth runway and a new international terminal. Because see, now these planes are 3 stories tall. They're too tall for our present hangars. So we got to build a new international terminal. That's our 3rd international terminal. See, and it's, in fact, somebody calls the name, asked about Stanley Avenue and Bill Stanley. they were architects on this new project. And we're going to build a hotel in the airport. That's Intercontinental Hotel, but it'll be owned by black folk. They'll have an opportunity to put their savings in it, see, and buy shares in it. And that's the one thing that we could do, is we could probably help people to understand that they can let their money can make more working for them than they can make working for money. And so the stories about the little boys who said, I got some Air Jordans for Christmas, and another one said, yeah, I got $100 worth of stock in Nike. See? And now that's another thing that happened to me accidentally, is how the Lord turns bad things to good. It was a war going on, and we had to buy defense stamps, and it taught us to save. And, you know, classes competing with each other. And we'd work on Saturdays cutting grass and washing cars to buy defense stamps. Well, by the time I finished Howard, I had almost $200 and some worth of defense stamps that had grown into bonds. And so I bought my first car with money that I had saved in elementary school with defense bonds. And it wasn't much of a car, but it got me up to Connecticut, where I got a scholarship to go to seminary. But it's saving instead of showing off.
Hi, I'm Carla Woolbright. I'm president of Rochelle NAACP. Much respect for you. But my question is, and you've mentioned quite a few times about the impact of education and teachers and colleges, and we see a great effort to divert funds from public education into private schools at this point. Could you speak a little bit on your thoughts on this? I mean, almost 70 years after Brown versus Board of Education, and we're dealing with this. Thank you.
Well, no, you're not going to like what I'm saying. And I don't know whether I'm right or not. But I have 4 children. And I got, the first 3 got millions of dollars of education. My son came along and said, Daddy, I don't want you to waste your money and my time. They don't teach you how to make money in school. There's no school I've been to where all the schools are broke. I don't want to be around broke people. Can you just give me your blessing? I said, for what? Do you need it? I said, I'll give you. He said, no, I have to go out and figure this out myself. And he's had about 6 businesses. And, you know, I think he'll be 43 next week. And they got 1,000 people on their payroll. And Bounce TV, you all get Bounce up here? He and some of his buddies put that together. And what they did was they didn't do TV for cable. They did TV for people who can't afford cable. So you can buy a little box for $29 at Best Buys or somewhere, and you can get all the sports stations, you can get Bounce. And so in 3 years, they have as large, in fact, probably a larger audience than BET on cable. And so that means the value of that station just continues to boom. And now they're talking about hooking up with another young brother who has television in 26 African countries. Now, he's already signed up the NBA. So y'all gonna have some Africans playing ball. Because the ones you got catch on very quickly. And they're taking over. But when they start seeing the NBA every day on their televisions all over Africa, and the WNBA too, so you're going to have some sisters coming into the match. So, and when you hook that up, that's another thing that we have to remember. We may be a minority here, but we are probably the best educated and have the highest quality of life of any peoples of African descent. And there's supposed to be 4.5 billion people on the African continent, a billion Nigerians somewhere toward the end of the century. And so that India will probably pass China. Nigeria and Indonesia are countries of colored peoples that will need to do business, and we will need to help them, and they will be the markets of the future. Now, you can speak to the people on the corner here in New York. I mean, that's one of I was blessed. The Irish, Italian, German. See, and then it was worse than that because New Orleans is a town where, I mean, it's blacks and Creole. My daddy was black and my mama was Creole. I come out too brown to be black, and hair too nappy to be Creole. So I had to get along with everybody. And you have to realize that whatever burdens you have, Reverend, don't we know that? We turn stumbling blocks into stepping stones. That's what we've done as a people throughout. The very burdens that are placed on us are the things that make us strong.
Ambassador Young, welcome home.
Thank you.
Welcome home.
I wonder if we could say together the last verse of the Negro National Anthem as our benediction. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who has brought us thus far on our way, Thou who has by Thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in Thy path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met Thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget Thee. But shadowed beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand. True to our God and true to our native land. Amen.